It all began in a quiet suburb of Denver, Colorado. Emily and Jake Thompson had just brought their newborn son, Noah, home from the hospital. Like many first-time parents, they were exhausted but overwhelmed with love. Their German shepherd, Max, a loyal, trained rescue, had been part of their lives for 4 years. He had always been gentle, alert, and affectionate. But nothing prepared them for what would happen next. The first night at home with baby Noah seemed peaceful, at first. Max sat beside the crib and watched the baby sleep. At first, Jake thought it was cute, even comforting. But by the second night, Max refused to leave the nursery at all. He paced. He growled at the air. He'd place himself between the crib and the window as if guarding against an invisible threat. Emily thought maybe Max was just adjusting. Maybe the new smells, sounds, and crying had him on edge. But on the third night, something changed. Max started whining, low and anxious. Every time the baby was laid in the crib. When Jake tried to lead him out of the room, the dog refused to budge. Instead, Max jumped up and placed his paws on the edge of the crib, staring intently at Noah, then back at the window. It was as if he was trying to say something. Trying to warn them. That's when Emily suggested they check the baby monitor footage, not the live feed, but the recordings from the last few nights. Just to be sure. Jake sighed, half laughing. You think he saw a ghost or something? Emily didn't answer. She was already scrolling through the footage. And then, her hand froze. Jake, look at this. What they saw in the footage made their blood run cold. The footage was shaky but clear. The baby monitor, mounted high in the corner of the nursery, had night vision enabled. Everything appeared in that eerie black and white glow. At 2:46 a.m., Max suddenly stood up from his usual spot near the door and locked his gaze on the window. That's when they saw it. A faint, slow movement behind the sheer white curtain. Not a shadow. Not the wind. A hand. It pressed lightly against the glass from the outside, fingers long and trembling. Then it slowly disappeared. Max had erupted into a low growl the moment it appeared, placing himself between the crib and the window, just as Jake had seen in person. Jake froze. That's not possible. That's a second-story window. There's no balcony. Emily stared, pale. He was trying to protect Noah. Suddenly, everything clicked. Max hadn't been acting strange, he had been shielding their baby from something. They called the police immediately. By the time officers arrived, there was no one outside. No fingerprints. No signs of forced entry. But one of the officers, a young woman named Officer Ramirez, noticed something in the flower bed beneath the nursery window. A cigarette butt. Still fresh. Still warm. The officer took it in a plastic evidence bag and made a note of the faint boot print near the fence line. You might have had a prowler. Could be random, or someone who knew this was the baby's room. That night, Jake installed floodlights and motion sensors. Emily couldn't sleep. She sat in the nursery with Max, who never once left Noah's side. By 3 a.m., the motion sensor lights outside flicked on. Max stood up again. This time, he started barking, ferociously, his fur bristling like he was ready to fight. Emily rushed to the window and pulled back the curtain, heart pounding. There was no one there. But the gate in the backyard was wide open. The backyard gate had been locked the night before. Jake had double-checked it himself before going to bed. Now it stood wide open, swinging gently in the breeze. Emily clutched Noah tightly against her chest. Her eyes darted toward Max, who was still barking and pacing by the window, his entire body tense, ears up, tail stiff like a board. Jake grabbed a flashlight and stormed into the backyard, barefoot, his heart racing. Max growled but stayed inside, clearly torn between following Jake and staying near the baby. Emily watched from the nursery window, holding Noah, her breath shallow. Outside, the yard looked undisturbed, no broken fence boards, no visible movement. But when Jake swept the flashlight across the far corner, he saw it. A ladder. A rusted, paint-chipped aluminum ladder propped against the back fence, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. He hadn't put it there. Jake slowly approached it. Beneath it, faint boot prints in the grass trailed off toward the alley. Someone had been watching them, maybe even planning to break in. He called the police again. This time, the response was different. Officer Ramirez returned, but she brought another officer, older, more serious, named Sergeant Harlow. After examining the scene, Harlow asked a strange question. "Have either of you noticed anyone following you lately? At the grocery store, on walks, anything out of the ordinary?" Emily and Jake shook their heads. Sergeant Harlow paused, his brow furrowed. "We've had 3 reports this month, families with newborns, all within a 10-mile radius. Same pattern. Someone watching the house at night. One attempted break-in." Jake's face went pale. "So, this isn't random?" "Probably not," Harlow replied. "Keep your lights on. Keep the dog close. And don't leave that baby unattended." The officers left after another sweep of the yard, but the tension in the house was unbearable. Emily barely spoke. Jake sat in the nursery with Max, staring at the baby monitor as if it were the only thing holding his world together. At 2:13 a.m., Max began to growl again. But this time, it wasn't at the window. He was looking at the door. From the inside. Max's growl deepened as he stood between the crib and the nursery door. His body was rigid, hackles raised. Jake instinctively moved closer to Noah, shielding the baby without even realizing it. Emily whispered, "What is it, boy?" But Max didn't budge. He didn't look away from the door. And that's when they heard it, a faint creak. The kind of sound an old wooden floor makes when someone puts weight on it. But both parents were already in the room. Jake slowly reached for the baby monitor receiver. It had multiple camera feeds, including one pointed at the downstairs hallway. He tapped through the cameras with shaky fingers. And there it was. A man. Standing just inside the front door. He wasn't moving, just watching. Wearing a hood, his face partially hidden in the dim glow of the nightlight near the stairs. His posture was casual. Too casual. Like he'd been there before. Emily covered her mouth to muffle a scream. Jake grabbed the baseball bat they kept in the closet. "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone." Max barked once, sharp, urgent, as if to say wait. But Jake was already heading downstairs. The hallway was empty. The front door, still shut. He checked every lock. The kitchen. The garage. Nothing. No sign of anyone. He was about to return upstairs when he noticed something taped to the front window from the outside. It was a note. A single sheet of paper with letters cut from magazines, like something out of a movie. "Your dog can't protect him forever." Jake stood frozen for a second. Then rage took over. He ripped the note down and stormed back upstairs, but before he said a word, Emily whispered, "Max won't stop growling. He won't stop." The dog had now moved directly in front of the crib, standing guard, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the door. Suddenly, the motion sensor lights in the backyard flashed on again. Emily looked at the monitor. And screamed. The camera feed from the nursery had just gone black. The screen was pitch black. Static hissed through the baby monitor, loud and sharp, like a warning siren that only Max could fully understand. The German Shepherd barked with a raw fury neither Jake nor Emily had ever heard before, a deep, primal sound that shook the walls of the nursery. Emily clutched Noah, backing into the farthest corner as Max threw himself against the door, snarling now, not in fear, but in defiance. Whatever was coming, he was ready. Jake, bat in hand, rushed toward the stairs. That's when they heard it. Glass shattering, from the back door. Someone was in the house. Jake didn't hesitate. He sprinted down the stairs and nearly collided with the figure in the kitchen. A man in a dark hoodie, holding a crowbar, eyes wild with adrenaline and something darker. Jake swung the bat. The man dodged, barely, and stumbled backward, right into Max. The shepherd had launched himself from the stairs. With a snarl, Max sank his teeth into the intruder's arm, dragging him down. The man screamed, tried to swing the crowbar, but Max was faster, relentless, protecting his family with everything he had. Jake tackled the man as Max held him, and within minutes, red and blue lights lit up the windows. Officer Ramirez was the first through the door, weapon drawn. "Drop it. Now." The man surrendered, bloodied and shaking. He wasn't just any prowler. He was a former convict with a history of stalking families, recently released, and had been watching the Thompsons for days. Emily sobbed as she held Noah tighter, Max at her side, panting, wounded, but alive. In the days that followed, the house became quiet again. Peaceful. Max had several stitches on his leg, but never left Noah's side. Not even once. Officer Ramirez visited often. One afternoon, she leaned down, petting Max gently. "You saved that baby's life, you know that?" Jake smiled. "He knew before we did. He always knew." And as the sun dipped behind the Colorado hills, Max lay beside Noah's crib, tail softly thumping, his job never truly done, not while his family still needed him.